Before you close your eyes tonight, imagine waking up not in your soft bed, but in a cold wooden hut where life is harsher than your worst Monday morning. Welcome to the medieval world. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I'm taking you on a calm but eye-opening journey back hundreds of years to a time when life was anything but simple, and why most of us today wouldn't survive a single day in medieval times. So lie back, relax, and let history quietly unfold. Imagine opening your eyes not to the soft glow of your phone screen, but to a world lit only by the first cold rays of morning slipping through uneven wooden planks. The air around you is heavy, not with the quiet hum of a heater, but with a mix of smoke, dampness, and the earthy smell of packed dirt beneath your feet. This is the moment your day begins, and even as you pull yourself upright, your body already knows it's time to work. There's no snooze button, no warm shower waiting, no comfort to slip into. In fact, the very concept of comfort, something you take for granted every day, is a luxury almost no one in this world has ever experienced. The mattress beneath you is nothing more than a sack of old straw, flattened by months of use, and home to fleas that bite without mercy. These tiny creatures are your nightly companions, and everyone around you accepts them as part of life. You might scratch, you might curse, but you can't escape them. Even the richest nobles struggle with them. Medieval life simply doesn't offer the kind of hygiene or bedding that modern people consider essential. The room you wake up in is dark, cramped, and cold. A single small window, really more of a hole covered with oiled cloth or wooden shutters, lets in a thread of pale light. Your breath forms clouds in the freezing morning air, and you pull your wool tunic closer to your body. It's rough, itchy, and thick, but it's all you have. Clothes are precious. You might own only one good set for the entire year, maybe two if you're lucky. Washing them is rare, not because you want to be dirty, but because soap is expensive and water must be heated with firewood, another limited resource. Outside, the sky is only beginning to brighten. It's quiet, almost peaceful, but the silence is deceptive. To your ears, shaped by the modern world's constant hum of engines and electronics, this silence might feel calming. But to medieval villagers, silence means something different. Silence is a reminder. A reminder that today, like yesterday, like every day before, your survival depends on what you do from sunrise to sunset. You reach for your shoes, simple leather, stiff, worn thin by miles of walking. There is no cushioning, no protection from stones or mud. You slide them on anyway because going barefoot in this world means cutting your feet on sharp rocks, freezing your toes in winter, or stepping on something that might infect you. And in a time long before antibiotics, a simple wound could change your fate forever. The first task of every morning is lighting the fire. The embers from last night are your lifeline. If they survive the night, you can coax them back to life by gently blowing and adding dried twigs. If the embers died out completely, you're in trouble. Starting a fire from scratch is difficult and time-consuming, and in the bitter winters of medieval Europe, even a delay could mean sickness or worse. Fire isn't just for warmth, it's for cooking, boiling water, and keeping dangerous animals at bay. Fire is survival. Once the fire crackles to life, the room glows with flickering light. Shadows dance on the wooden walls, and the warmth begins to push away the cold. It's time to prepare breakfast, though the word breakfast carries far less meaning than it does today. You won't find eggs, pancakes, parathas, or even a proper cup of tea. Instead, you take a chunk of yesterday's bread, hard enough to knock on like wood, and soak it in a bowl of watered-down ale. Not wine, not milk, not juice. Ale. Weak beer. Even children drink it because clean water is incredibly rare and often dangerous. Streams are polluted by animals, waste, or runoff from nearby homes. Wells can be contaminated. Boiling water is possible, but again, wood is precious, and households ration every stick carefully. As you chew the bread, the tough crust scraping your teeth, you don't think of flavor. You think of energy. Fuel. Something to get you through the long hours ahead. The idea of eating for pleasure is reserved for the wealthy, and even they don't experience the variety and richness of modern meals. Simple food is your reality. Breakfast has to be quick. Time is everything. The moment daylight is strong enough, your work begins. There are no weekends, no casual days, no sleeping in. Your entire life is organized around sunlight. Artificial lighting exists, but it's unreliable and expensive. Candles are made of animal fat and burn quickly, oil lamps are for those with money, torches are smoky and impractical indoors. This means you work from sunrise to sunset, and there is no changing that. You step outside into the crisp morning air. The world around you is a mix of mud, thatched roofs, and smoke rising from chimneys. Animals move about, chickens scratching the ground, goats bleating, maybe a cow or two if your family is fortunate. Your home blends into the landscape because every house is built the same way, timber frames filled with wattle and daub, a mixture of mud, straw, and sometimes animal dung. Walls crack. Roofs leak. But this is home. As the village awakens, the rhythm of life becomes clear. Men prepare tools and head to the fields. Women collect water, prepare food, spin wool, or tend to children. Children, if old enough, join in the work. Childhood as we understand it today doesn't exist. There is no long period of school, toys, or carefree days. Children are small workers, expected to help as soon as they can stand steady on their feet. If you are a farmer, and most medieval people are, your body is your most valuable tool. Your hands are calloused, your back is strong, and you've worked so long in the fields that every motion feels automatic. You grab a wooden plow, a hoe, or whatever tool your family owns. These tools are heavy, splintered, and nowhere near as efficient as modern equipment. But they're all you have. If you're lucky, your family owns a single ox to help plow the land. If not, the plowing is done by hand, day after painful day. Farming isn't just difficult, it's unpredictable. A bad season, too much rain, too little rain, early frost, disease in your crops, any one of these could mean hunger. And hunger in the medieval world is not something small. It's life-changing. It's deadly. There are no supermarkets, no backup food sources, no government support. If your harvest fails, you suffer. It's that simple. As you walk toward the fields, you pass familiar faces. But you don't greet them casually like modern neighbors. Conversation is polite but brief. Everyone is tired. Everyone has work to do. Survival leaves little time for socializing. People age faster, not only because life is harsh, but because constant labor wears down the body. A person in their early 40s might look as old as someone in their 70s today. Imagine stepping out into the world after that exhausting medieval sunrise, your body stiff from work already done and more work waiting ahead. The moment you walk into the open village square, it becomes very clear that your life is not truly your own. Every face around you, from the oldest elder to the youngest child barely able to hold a wooden bucket, is part of a system that has existed for generations, unchanged, unquestioned, and unbreakable. You were born into this system, and no matter how strong, smart, or ambitious you are, your fate is tied to it as tightly as a knot soaked in water and pulled until it refuses to loosen. This world is governed by the Lord of the land, a man who likely lives in a stone manor house several kilometers away, an estate far grander than any building you've ever stepped inside. He owns the fields, the pasture, the forest, and often even the mill and the ovens the village depends on. You are not a slave, but you are not free either. You are what history calls a serf, bound by duty, tradition, and law to serve the land and the person who owns it. You owe him your labor, your harvest, and in many cases, portions of your livestock or belongings. Your time does not belong to you. A percentage of each week is devoted to working on the Lord's estate, repairing his fences, tending his animals, plowing his fields, harvesting his crops. The rest of the time, you work for your own survival. It's a balance that always feels unfair but is never questioned. People talk quietly among themselves sometimes, whispering frustrations about the harshness of the system, but the sense of rebellion you might see in modern movies simply isn't realistic here. This is the world. This is the way things are. Changing the system would be like trying to move a mountain with bare hands. Impossible. Nearby, the reeve, the local overseer chosen from among the villagers, keeps track of who owes what. He knows which households are behind on their duties, which families owe extra grain, and which villagers have tried to avoid labor. Not that avoiding labor is common. You don't have the luxury of laziness. Lazy people don't survive. And if you ever try to avoid your obligations to the Lord, punishment will follow. Punishments in this world aren't things you can shrug off. Laws are strict and often terrifying. Something as simple as gathering a few extra sticks of firewood from the wrong patch of forest could result in a fine you can't afford. If you're caught stealing grain during a hungry winter, you might be locked in the village stocks for days. Passers-by would mock you, throw old food, or spit in your direction. The humiliation alone is crushing, but the physical discomfort, cold nights, rain soaking your clothes, hunger gnawing at your stomach, is enough to break even the strongest spirit. And for more serious offenses, the punishments grow darker. Branding. Mutilation. Whipping. In some cases, even death. Medieval justice is not gentle. It is not compassionate. It is designed to remind the entire community that stepping out of line is dangerous. But punishment isn't the only hardship of medieval society. Freedom of movement is almost non-existent. You cannot simply pack your belongings and decide to move to another village or city. Travel is restricted. You must have permission to leave the land, and that permission is rarely granted. The roads themselves are risky, crawling with bandits and opportunists. Most peasants live and die within a few miles of where they were born. The entire world outside your village might as well be a rumor, a story told by a wandering merchant or a passing monk. And education? That belongs to the elite. Maybe the church. Reading and writing are luxuries reserved for nobles, priests, monks, a few merchants, and sometimes the Lord's family. For everyone else, the world is navigated through memory, tradition, and spoken instruction. You learn by watching your parents, copying their movements, making the same mistakes they did, and trying to avoid the ones that nearly broke them. Books are rare and handwritten, each one taking months of labor in a monastery. The idea of reading for pleasure is as foreign to a medieval farmer as electricity or airplanes. Life revolves around labor, and the labor never ends. If you're a man, your tasks center around farming, repairing structures, maintaining tools, and managing animals. If you're a woman, your responsibilities are just as heavy, perhaps heavier. You clean, cook, gather water, spin wool, sew clothes, tend to children, milk animals, garden, prepare food for winter, and help in the fields during busy seasons. There is no relief, no division of men's work and women's work as modern society imagines it. Everyone works. Everyone contributes. Because if anyone falls behind, the entire family suffers. Even simple tasks carry difficulty. Something as ordinary as collecting water requires walking long distances to a well or stream, filling heavy buckets, and carrying them back home, often several times a day. Washing clothes involves beating them in cold water. Cooking requires hours of preparation, chopping firewood, keeping the hearth burning, and making sure valuable ingredients don't spoil. Nothing is easy. Nothing is convenient. Everything takes time. And speaking of time, there's a strange reality here: medieval people do not measure time the way we do. There are no clocks in homes, no wristwatches, no digital displays telling you the exact minute. Time is measured by the sun, by church bells, by instinct. You know the day's rhythm because you've lived it thousands of times. Morning labor begins when the first light is strong enough to see your hands. Midday arrives when the sun reaches its highest point. Evening comes with the long shadows stretching across the fields. In this world, you don't get to decide your future. Social class is fixed like stone. If you're born a peasant, you'll die a peasant. If your father was a farmer, you'll be a farmer. Careers don't exist. Passions don't matter. Your path isn't chosen by dreams or personal choice, it's chosen by survival. That might sound suffocating to a modern mind, but medieval villagers didn't constantly think about what their life could have been. They didn't have the luxury of imagination in that direction. Their minds were focused on immediate needs, harvests, weather, health, food, safety. And yet, despite the strictness and limitations, medieval communities are close-knit. Everyone depends on everyone else. People help one another build houses, harvest crops, repair carts, and care for children. The village is a tight web of relationships formed by necessity. You don't choose your neighbors, but they shape your life. News spreads fast. Secrets don't last. Rumors travel faster than birds. But as interconnected as the community is, the power structure towering above it dominates everything. The local lord answers to a higher-ranking noble or perhaps a king, and those leaders engage in politics, wars, and negotiations that peasants often hear about only through traveling messengers or wandering storytellers. When nobles make decisions, peasants feel the consequences. New taxes. Increased duties. Demands for soldiers. A call for more harvest. Villagers must adapt, even if the changes make life even harder. And with all this responsibility weighing on your shoulders, the physical strain is constant. Imagine bending over for hours at a time, back cracked, hands blistered, sweat dripping into your eyes. You lift heavy stones, carry sacks of grain, drag logs, or hammer wooden beams into place. There are no gloves, no ergonomic tools, no machinery. Just muscle and willpower. Your body grows strong, but it also grows tired, deeply, permanently tired. Even so, within this harsh system, there are moments of laughter. Villagers joke among themselves during work. Children play with carved wooden toys or chase chickens. Women gather to spin wool and exchange stories. Men share quiet conversation while repairing roofs or sharpening tools. These moments don't erase the hardship, but they add color to life. They make survival feel meaningful, shared, almost bearable. Still, every day reinforces the same truth: your life is not your own. Every action is shaped by expectations, obligations, and fear of consequences. The rules are unyielding, the labor unending, and the boundaries of your world inescapable. This is the reality of medieval society, strict, demanding, relentless, and it is a world where freedom is a privilege reserved for a tiny fraction of people. For everyone else, life is work. Work is life. And survival is the only goal.
Without hygiene, without proper sewage, without clean water, illnesses move from house to house rapidly. Diarrhea, dysentery, fevers, worms, skin infections, and respiratory illnesses are constant threats. People get sick often and healing is slow. And then there are the bigger, darker illnesses, the ones that sweep across villages and towns like storms. Measles, smallpox, influenza, plague. These diseases don't just affect individuals, they devastate entire populations. People don't understand how they spread. Some believe the air itself becomes poisoned. Others think it's punishment for sins. There are even stories of people blaming cats, witches, outsiders, or those they see as different. The fear of disease shapes daily life. When someone becomes sick, neighbors worry. Families pray. The church rings bells. The herbalist gathers plants. And everyone hopes that the illness doesn't spread. Despite this harsh reality, medieval people continue living with remarkable resilience. They don't expect comfort. They don't demand ease. They find joy in the small moments: laughter around the hearth, music at festivals, stories told by firelight, the beauty of a warm summer day, or the relief of a healed wound. Food, hygiene, and medicine in the medieval world paint a picture of life far more fragile than ours today. Every day carries risk, and every moment of health is a quiet blessing. Yet, within the struggle, medieval people continue. They work. They love. They celebrate. They endure. And through their endurance, humanity survives long enough to reach the modern world. A world that, compared to theirs, feels almost like paradise. The biggest battles were fought inside the body, battles against invisible enemies no one even knew existed. And that's what makes medieval life so terrifying for a modern person. We live in an age where medicine is advanced, hygiene is routine, and infections are treatable. But remove all of that, and suddenly even the strongest among us becomes vulnerable. If you, as a modern individual, were dropped into medieval society, your body wouldn't be adapted to their bacteria, their food, their water, or their medical practices. A single misstep, a meal too spoiled, water too contaminated, a cut too deep, could end everything. And even if you begged for help, the treatments available would likely make you worse, not better. This wasn't just life, it was survival against overwhelming odds. A world where your body endured constant threats, where illness was ever present, and where hope rested not on medicine but on luck, faith, or sheer endurance. And that is why, if you ever tried to live even a single day in medieval times, your greatest enemy wouldn't be knights, war, or harsh labor. It would be your own biology, waging a desperate fight in a world with no knowledge of how to save you. Even entertainment carried risks. Today we relax with music, movies, and games. But medieval entertainment was often violent and public. Executions, animal fights, jousting competitions, and rough celebrations fueled by alcohol. Music existed, but instruments were primitive. Dancing existed, but certain dances were forbidden for moral reasons. Reading was a luxury reserved for the wealthy and educated. Books were rare, handmade, and incredibly expensive. Even learning to read was a privilege that most peasants would never experience. Travel, something we take for granted, was another enormous challenge. Roads were rough, unsafe, and poorly marked. Bandits lurked in forests. Wild animals posed real danger. And traveling without permission from local authorities could be suspicious or illegal. If you got lost, you couldn't ask for directions in modern terms. Landmarks weren't the same. Maps were inaccurate or symbolic. And if you wandered onto someone else's land, you could be confronted by armed guards demanding to know your business. Nighttime brought its own fears. With no streetlights and no safe electricity, darkness was total, deep, pitch-black, disorienting darkness that swallowed everything. People feared traveling after sunset. Ghost stories, folklore, and superstitions filled the night. Doors were bolted shut. Families huddled together near fires, listening to wolves howling in the distance. The night belonged to the unknown, and people respected it with fear. But perhaps the most shocking part for a modern person would be the constant presence of death. It was everywhere, sudden, common, accepted as part of life. Children died young. Adults died from infections, wounds, hunger, childbirth, and disease. Funerals were frequent. Cemeteries filled quickly. People lived with the awareness that life was fragile, unpredictable, and often short. There was no expectation of a long, comfortable life. No retirement plans. No medical breakthroughs. No safety nets. Just a relentless day-to-day struggle to survive. This mindset shaped medieval behavior. People prayed more, feared more, fought more, and accepted hardship as fate. If you entered this world with a modern perspective, expecting fairness, reason, comfort, or rights, you would be overwhelmed. Not because medieval people were primitive, but because their world demanded a level of endurance, patience, and acceptance that modern society no longer requires. Imagine trying to adjust. You wake at dawn to hard labor. You eat rough bread and drink weak ale because water isn't safe. You follow strict rules, avoid angering local authorities, attend mandatory religious services, perform tasks for the Lord, and navigate dangers that exist everywhere, from the fields to the forests to the very air you breathe. You try to speak, but your accent gives you away. You try to question something, but suspicion rises among those around you. You try to avoid conflict, but the society is built on hierarchy and obedience. Slowly you realize the truth. Medieval life didn't allow for modern thinking. It didn't give space for individuality. It didn't offer comfort or fairness. It was a world shaped by fear, faith, and survival. A world where strength meant endurance, not choice. And that is why, if a modern person tried to survive just one day in the Middle Ages, they would struggle. Not only physically but mentally, socially, and emotionally. The rules were different. The expectations were different. The world was different. You wouldn't just be fighting disease, hunger, or labor. You would be fighting the entire mindset of a world that saw life, death, and humanity through a completely different lens. The medieval age wasn't evil or backward, it was simply built for its own time. But it was a world that demanded sacrifices, obedience, resilience, and acceptance of hardship in a way that modern people are rarely prepared for. To walk its roads, breathe its air, and live its reality is to step into a life where every moment is a test of strength. And that is why, You truly wouldn't last a single day.